Welcome everyone to a presentation on the College of Arts and Sciences. We are students from the College Cogno, which is basically a volunteer student group on campus that gives presentations like these designed to inform future students and their families. My name is Daniel. I'm currently a rising senior in the college. I study neuroscience, and I'm currently in the process of applying to medical school.
Hi guys, my name is Caitlin. I am a rising senior in the college. I'm studying molecular and cell biology, and my plans are also on the pre-med track.
Hi everyone, my name is Rachel and I just graduated from Penn a couple of weeks ago. And while I was at Penn, I majored in cognitive science and double minored in philosophy and consumer psychology. And next year I'll be working in consulting in New York.
Awesome. So we're going to try and walk you guys through a little bit of our journey at Penn and part of what makes it so special for us. Great. So first, to talk about some of the things that we're going to discuss in this presentation. First, we'll kind of go through what it means to be part of the college and what the college is at Penn, because Penn is a university with many different schools that are part of it. Second, we'll start going through curriculum, the different types of general education requirements we have at Penn. Third, we'll go through advising, the different people that are assigned to you and resources that are available for you at Penn. We'll follow that by integration of knowledge, which basically just means all the different things that Penn students do outside of the classroom to get involved, whether it's internships, research, going abroad. And we'll conclude with life after Penn and different places that students go after they graduate.
So like Daniel mentioned, the first thing we wanted to explain is what exactly is the College of Arts and Sciences at Penn. So at Penn, there are 4 different undergraduate schools. There's the Wharton School, the Engineering School, the Nursing School, and then the College of Arts and Sciences, which is our largest undergraduate school. It houses our liberal arts college. So there are around 1,500 first-year students in the college, and then 6,400 students overall. So we like to think of ourselves as kind of a mid-sized college, mid-sized university, where whenever you walk around campus, you're always running into familiar faces, but at the same time, there are plenty of new people to meet, new resources and opportunities to explore. But because we are part of this broader University of Pennsylvania, there are a lot of resources that are at our disposal. So Penn has a policy where you can actually take classes at any of our other undergraduate or graduate schools, with the exception of the medical school, which again really allows you to explore all that Penn has to offer, whether you're thinking about pre-law and want to try a class at the law school or are interested in a class at Wharton. But within the college itself, we have about 2,000 courses, 55 majors, which we'll get into in some detail later, and then 80 minors, including some minors that bridge different schools. So there are some minors where half of the courses are in the college, half are in Wharton, half are in nursing, again, really allowing you to get that breadth of all that the university has to offer.
So now talking a little bit about the curriculum, the College of Arts and Sciences provides a lot of opportunities for you to really make your education your own while you're in your 4 years here. So you can see you have kind of 3 separate bubbles of your education. So you have your major, your general education requirements, and your free electives. So the gen eds we'll talk about in the next few slides. The major is obviously where you take a lot of your classes and you kind of pick one from another list that we'll go through later on. And then your free electives can make up minors or just classes that you're interested in. And so the cool thing about all of these is that you can mix them. So something that counts for your major might also count for your gen eds, or might even count for a free elective. So every class that you take is kind of mixed together and becomes part of the whole educational experience that you end up getting here at the end of your 4 years. Looking at some of those statistics off to the side, 95% of classes are taught by faculty. That extra 5% is primarily visiting professors or professors who are in our language department who may not have a PhD, but are part of, they're native speakers from that country and can teach students a lot about the culture as well as the language. And then beneath that, 70% of all lectures and seminars have 25 or fewer students. So the classes that are going to be larger are going to be your Intro 101, 102 level classes. But even those classes get broken down into something called a recitation section. So while you may have the large lecture class 2 or 3 times a week, you will also meet once a week with a smaller group section of about 15 to 20 students where you can get your questions answered by a teaching assistant or the professor and just kind of understand the information better. But primarily as you move up in years. So as juniors and seniors, most of your classes are going to be very, very small seminar style classes that you get to interact with the professor and your other students as well.
Great, yeah, and just kind of on an informal note, I think you have a lot of flexibility here. That's maybe one of the key words, in that you can use your free electives, kind of like Caitlin was saying, for whatever you want to do, whether it's picking up another minor, or maybe if you're like me, you just want to explore a bunch of different classes that sound interesting. And so in the next couple of slides, we're going to talk about some of the avenues students take. You can see in the general education section of the Venn diagram, there's foundational approaches and sectors of knowledge. So these are the two types of gen eds that we have at Penn. And I'm going to first talk about the sectors of knowledge. So the sectors of knowledge are basically these 7 different categories. And every semester, there's between 20 and 50 classes for each of these that would fulfill that requirement. And so they're kind of spread across a lot of different domains, and there's a lot of flexibility there. And I think a lot of times you could just get a lot of these done really quickly when you're first entering your time at Penn, but most students will choose to spread them out throughout their time. And I think they're a great excuse to just try something new and explore a class that you might not normally take. I know some of my most memorable experiences at Penn, like I took some really interesting classes in like Asian American pop culture, which kind of grew my interest in like the Asian American community at Penn. And I ended up getting really involved with the Penn Asian American Community House from that. And likewise for a lot of these different sectors, I know tons of students who pick up minors just because of an experience they had with one unique class that just sounded interesting to them. And likewise, if you're someone who's maybe more humanities type of student and you're kind of terrified of natural sciences and mathematics, or likewise, if you're someone who's very analytical and you can't imagine taking a history and tradition class, there are tons of classes that kind of walk the line between those. So there's things like history of math, which could kind of take the approach of mathematics from a different point of view. And so there's plenty of different classes that go both ways to really just make it so that you can build your own curriculum that fits these requirements.
So whereas the sectors of knowledge are more like subject areas, the second part of our general education curriculum are the foundational approaches, which you could think of broadly as skills. So while you do need to take one class for all of the sectors and one class for all of the foundational approaches, Penn has something really great called double counting, which means that one class that counts towards a foundational approach could also count towards a sector or also count towards your major. So a Penn professor actually did a study looking to see how many courses it realistically took students to fulfill all of the foundational approaches and sectors, and it was only about 7 to 8 classes total because of double counting. So even though it might look like a lot on the screen, it actually is very feasible to weave into your curriculum. And jumping back to what exactly these foundational approaches are, like I said, they're skills. The bottom 4 on this slide are pretty similar to the sectors in that they're broad buckets. There are 20 to 50 classes that might fulfill them every semester, but the 2 that are the most unique are the writing requirement and the foreign language requirement. Every student at Penn, regardless of which undergraduate school they're in, is required to take a writing seminar, which is just meant to bring you up to speed, ensure that everybody is kind of on the same page with their collegiate level writing. It teaches you about research, how to write a cover letter, things of that nature, but it can be very customized to what your interests are. So for example, my writing seminar, the focus was on the intersection between cognitive science and acting. There are some that are on chick lit, on all different sorts of really unique subject areas that you might find interesting to you. And then jumping to the foreign language requirement, this is the only requirement that you can fulfill before you even get to Penn, whether that's with an SAT subject test, with your AP or IB test, or one of Penn's own placement exams. But if you just come into Penn with no language experience, you are required to take 4 semesters of a foreign language, although in reality, most students place out of all or most of that requirement. But Caitlin alluded to this earlier, a lot of our foreign language faculty are native speakers. Penn really prides itself on having an immersion program for our foreign languages, meaning that you learn the cultural component of the language as well as the language itself. So for example, I took both Spanish and sign language at Penn. I was able to engage with the Hispanic and deaf communities in Philadelphia, and I really felt like they were some of my favorite courses at the university.
So now shifting gears and talking a bit about majors. So you see this large list, and obviously we do not have time to discuss every single major individually, but there's a couple things that I would like to point out. One thing is that Penn really prides itself on creating interdisciplinary majors. So these are some of those longer names, just to point out a few. You see philosophy, politics, and economics, which we shorten to PPE at Penn. And that's kind of the cross section between those three different fields. And a lot of students really benefit from having experience across all of those dimensions. Another one is science, technology, and society, which looks at how scientists are advancing the field, the history of that, um, along those lines. But even though we have some specific majors that are referred to as interdisciplinary, all of the majors at Penn can really be referred to as interdisciplinary in the sense that they're very broad and also contain something called a concentration. So a lot of these majors are very large fields. As a biology major, there's a lot of different fields of biology, but the biology major itself has many different smaller concentrations within it. So it's kind of like you're getting a major, but then you're also choosing a specific field within that major that you want to pursue even further. For me, that is cellular and molecular biology. And so a lot of students like to take upper level in-depth classes to kind of make that major even more something that they're interested in. One more thing that I wanted to point out was the individualized major. That's pretty uncommon at Penn simply because of the ease of double majoring at Penn, but also, adding minors, adding concentration, things along those lines. So a lot of students do not end up doing the individualized major. One example of that, of a successful individualized major, however, was there was a girl who came in and she really wanted to do the illustrations in biology textbooks. So she was actually able to combine fine arts, biology, computer design, and kind of make her own major in that sense. Some of our interdisciplinary majors also started out as individualized majors and just became very popular. One example of that is our neuroscience major. So a lot of these majors just encompass a lot of different fields. In the college, you have 2 years to declare your major, so you have up until the end of your sophomore year, and you can always add on additional minors or majors after that point. You can also easily change your major in the college, and we'll talk about some of the resources that can help you with that later on.
Great. So now we're going to start talking about advising. And so there's a lot of handholding at Penn. And on top, we kind of have resources that are specifically assigned to you. And on the bottom, we're looking at more resources that are just available for you whenever you want to reach out during your time at Penn. So when you accept your offer to Penn, the first thing that will happen is a couple people will start reaching out to you. So the first will be your pre-major advisor. So this is a faculty member on campus, and they'll try and set up a time to kind of meet and talk to you. So whether it's by video chat, or if you're near campus, maybe you can come on campus and actually meet in person. And this person is really just there to kind of help you throughout your first couple of years before you declare your major with signing up for classes. And so you'll meet with them every semester before you register for classes. And they'll just kind of talk about what your interests are, maybe what are some fields that you would consider going into, and they'll help you design a schedule that will be beneficial to you, even though you probably don't know exactly what you want to go into from the get-go. So this is just a great resource. My pre-major advisor was actually the house dean of my freshman house. And so it was really easy for me to meet with her. I could just run down the hall and go have a quick meeting. If I had any questions, I could just drop in anytime. The second person is your peer advisor. So this is a student on campus. This is essentially just someone who's gone through this process of moving into campus, going to a new environment, buying textbooks, anything like that. And they're just kind of an informal contact point for you that you can just reach out with any questions that you have about the experience on campus, the social scene, just kind of anything along those lines. It's just a student's perspective on those things. Coming along to the right, once you declare your major, you'll be assigned a major department advisor. So this is a faculty member that's actually part of the major that you've declared. They have a lot of knowledge of the ins and the outs of that major, things like senior theses, declaring or graduating with honors, independent research, all those, they're just the experts on, and they'll help you kind of make sure that you're on track to graduate on time and complete all your requirements. On the bottom, a few resources that we'd like to highlight. Obviously, we can't fit everything onto these slides, but these are just a couple things that we want students to know about. The College Office of Academic Support, it's a really great resource. These are kind of like the wizards of the college. They know everything about gen eds, classes, and they kind of know about other resources that are available on campus. So if you don't know where to go for something, this is a great place to start. They have candy. There's some puppies always running around. It's a great drop-in hours. You can just stop by any time that they're open. Career Services and Mentoring, we'll talk a little bit more at the end of this presentation, but it's essentially the name for Penn's kind of broad category of all career-related division kind of activities. And so they have tons of different resources for you. So they can do mock interviews. If you have an interview, they'll have kind of like you can send your resume and they can send it back with edits. I know they have like another branch for kind of people that are preparing to apply for graduate school, preparing that process, writing committee letters, things like that. And then finally, the campus-wide network, which is probably the most important thing on this slide, in my opinion, is just that something I didn't know about Penn before coming there is that there's a huge culture of mentorship and a lot of older students always looking to give back to younger students. And this actually became a really large part of my time at Penn from the very beginning, just because there were students reaching out to me that I barely even knew, saying like, hey, you know, if you have any questions, you want to grab coffee, let's talk about your experience coming to Penn. And now a few years later, I found that I am that person trying to reach out to incoming students and really just make sure that they're doing okay. And that just continues all the way up as I kind of look beyond Penn into graduate schools. There's plenty of mentors around to just talk to about different obstacles that you're facing or directions that you want to take your life.
Next up, we have our integration of knowledge slide. This is my personal favorite slide of the presentation because it really highlights that our lives at Penn are about a lot more than the time we spend in the classroom. And we do a lot of things around our campus and our Philadelphia community that contribute to our experience at Penn. So I'll kick things off with talking about further afield and internships, and then I'll pass it off to Daniel and Caitlin. But to kick things off with further afield, that essentially means our study abroad programs. Penn really values having students go abroad. We think it's important to have that global perspective, and there are a lot of different and innovative ways that Penn sends its students abroad. So talking first about our shorter term abroad experiences, you can go abroad from a week to an entire year. If you're looking at only going for a week or so, Penn has something called global seminars, which are where you take a class for a full semester, and then during your spring break, winter break, or the first week of summer, you, your class, and your professor all go abroad to a destination related to what you are learning about in the classroom. One of my friends did this where she took a class about the impact of the Holocaust on French culture, and then they went abroad to France and met with Holocaust survivors during their breaks. They also have a class where you'll learn about kind of different ecosystems and then go to the Galapagos. There are a ton of these programs and they're growing every single year. Next, there's something called Penn Summer. This is for about a month, sometimes 2 months over the summer, where you'll go with other Penn students and Penn faculty to somewhere in the world, and you'll take courses and kind of interact with that culture, and then also gain Penn credit while you're there. So my roommate actually went to London, and they went to something like 20 different plays over the course of 2 months, and she was halfway to a theater arts minor while she was abroad there. Next, we have our traditional semester or year-long abroad programs. Penn is great in terms of going abroad in that they'll ensure that when you're going abroad, all of the credit you're getting will come back to Penn with you. So you'll never be in a situation where you're behind on your plan to graduate because of being abroad. And also all of your financial aid goes abroad with you. Penn never wants financial restraints to be a reason why students can't go abroad. And we have partner schools all over the world. And if there's a program that doesn't exist, Penn is really open to having you create it. The last thing to touch on with abroad is Penn in Washington. If anybody's interested in political science or activism or anything in that sphere, Penn has a satellite campus in DC where you'll go, you'll take classes at night, and then during the day, you'll intern somewhere in DC. And this is a semester-long program. Moving to internships, a great way to bridge the gap between abroad and internships is the Penn Global Research and Internship Program, also known as GRIP. And this is a program where Penn will match you with a research opportunity or an internship position abroad and send you there for the summer. So for me, my sophomore summer, I went abroad to Sydney, Australia. I did an internship at a small crowdfunding startup. I took a class at the University of Sydney, and it was hands down one of the best experiences that I've ever had. But if you do want a domestic internship, Daniel talked about this a bit before. Career Services is amazing in matching you with different positions, helping you prepare. We also have a database with all of our tens of thousands of alumni that you can reach out to, and they're super receptive to answering your emails and helping you figure out what it is that you want to do, whether it's for the summer or more long term.
So now heading into the research side of things, Penn is a very big research-based institution, meaning that almost all of our professors and departments are doing some sort of really cool research, and a lot of students choose to get involved with this at some point during their time at Penn. This also means that the research is not just centered around your white lab coat working with mice and bacteria type of research. You can do research across all of the departments, in the libraries, in the Penn Museum that we have, and there are just countless opportunities for you to get involved. It can be a little bit intimidating starting to get involved with research, so we have CURF, which is the Center for Undergraduate Research and Fellowships, to help match students to different PIs, which are primary investigators, to get involved with different labs or specific projects. CURF can also provide funding. So if you wanted to spend the summer doing research, but it wasn't a paid opportunity, CURF can provide funding for that. Another nice opportunity at Penn is that you can take research for class credit. So in the terms of independent study, so each semester at Penn, I've taken independent study where I get course credit for simply working in my lab. And then at the end of the semester, I put together a paper based on some of the data that I've collected. So research is definitely a really big thing here at Penn that you can get involved in. Even from freshman year, a lot of our professors are willing to take students under their wing and kind of train them in the different techniques that they use in their lab in order to really get a meaningful experience here and learn outside of the classroom.
Finally, we're going to move on to service. Penn likes to call itself the Civic Ivy, and I think the reason is because there's just so many different opportunities, and it's maybe one of the only things that students are more widely involved in than research is service. And essentially, I think there are a couple of reasons for that, but one of them is just because there's so much opportunity on campus. And so we actually have multiple different hubs. So kind of the Civic House, the Netter Center, these are basically just kind of parent organizations that have several smaller organizations or other clubs and activities that run underneath them that students can get involved with. Quick example is like City Step, I think is always really a fantastic program where it's essentially like a group of students that help put on for schools that have had their fine arts funding cut. They basically put on dance classes for these students, and they have a huge celebration at the end of the semester at the Philadelphia Museum of Art. A lot of people go, and it's just kind of a great way to become part of the community that Penn lives within.
So now moving on to life after Penn, we have 2 slides on this. And so the first half is kind of split up between graduate school and employment. So in terms of graduate study, you see that the largest is medicine, but there's also a lot of other fields going on. So you have anything from social science to law to education. And many Penn students do choose to go on to graduate study and to pursue this at some point in time, whether it's directly after graduation or several gap years later. Then over on the right side, in the fields of employment, you see that the top 3 fields, consulting, financial services, and technology, that doesn't necessarily sound like something that might come out of the College of Arts and Sciences, but that just goes to show you the power of a liberal arts education. A lot of the students in the College of Arts and Sciences graduate with skills in a wide variety of fields that makes us able to take on a lot of different types of jobs. So you see students going into countless different fields. And again, those percentages will kind of sway as graduate degrees are obtained and students become more proficient in different subjects, but the degree that you graduate with from the College of Arts and Sciences can be used in a wide range of fields.
Yeah, absolutely. And so here we have a little bit of a rundown on kind of the different places that students actually go. And so you can see that 17% of the students go directly to graduate school, but I think the most important statistic really, maybe in this whole presentation, is that 75% of alumni go on to earn graduate degrees at some point in their lives. And I think that means a lot because just when you think about when you're in a classroom at Penn, 3 out of 4 of these people will graduate from their bachelor's degree and they'll think about the fact that they still want to have more education further on in their lives. And so I think that kind of speaks to the general ideology at Penn is that college shouldn't be something that you come out of and think, wow, I'm never going to learn again. I'm never going to take classes again. It's more that your life learning is going to be a part of your life, no matter what field you're going into, no matter what kind of domain or job you're interested in. 73% of students go directly into the workforce. And out of those, 42% are receiving their offers directly through career services. So I think, like we mentioned earlier, that just kind of speaks to the power of career services with connecting students to these jobs, these internships that kind of lead to a further path along their career. And finally, the top graduate school and top employer is University of Pennsylvania. Makes a lot of sense. It's just that students like it here. They've gotten used to it here. There's a very specific flavor of open collaboration, and we kind of have this one university policy where we really try and tie all these different schools together and allow the resources and the research to kind of collaborate between them. Other than that, students can take gap years, they can go on fellowships. There's several different programs that students will get involved in that you can see on the slides. And so this is coming to the end of our formal presentation. So we have a couple of resources here we'd like to highlight. First is collegecognoscenti@gmail.com. This is our email address. If you have any questions that come up, things you want answered, maybe you want to speak to a student from a specific domain, feel free to shoot us an email. We'll connect you and we'll respond to you as best we can. Second is collegecognoscenti.com. This presentation was rather academically focused, but our lives are full of so many different elements, and being a student at Penn is honestly an extremely colorful experience with tons of different things to offer. So we have a blog on this website where we kind of talk about some of the experience we have on a day-to-day basis. And finally, we thought it would be nice to conclude with a little bit of more of a personal story about why we chose to come to Penn and why we chose the College of Arts and Sciences. So for me, I wasn't really sure what university I wanted to go to, but then I visited during it had been a students event, and I saw a booth for biological basis of behavior, which was a major at the time, which has actually been renamed to neuroscience, my current major. And they essentially had, I started talking to a couple of the students that were there running the booth. First of all, I couldn't believe that there were students as enthusiastic about a major that they would run a booth for it. But second of all, it was really great just because I found out that this major was exactly what I was looking for, and that it wasn't a pure only studying the cellular processes major, but they were talking about, you'll learn about how cellular processes work, but then also talk about how this affects human behavior. And I think for me, I really just wanted to understand both the mind and body and how those two connect and lead to changes in how people behave to each other and in the world around them. And so I felt like this is the program for me. I need to come to this university and I need to pick this major. And wouldn't you know it, a few years later, that's the major I'm going to be graduating with.
I initially knew that I wanted to come to Penn because I wanted to stay local, and I had visited Penn many times just growing up and knew that it was the school that I had wanted to go to. But I really chose the College of Arts and Sciences after deciding, one, that I wanted to be pre-med, but also we talked a little bit about the one university policy where you can take classes across all of the schools, including the graduate schools. And even though I want to go into medicine, I still have a strong interest in the sciences and biology and cell biology. And so I was interested in starting to take classes in some of the graduate schools here. And now as a result, in 4 years, I'll be graduating in, well, I guess one more year now, but I'll be graduating with my master's and my bachelor's at the same time in biology, just based on all of the graduate level classes that I was able to take while as an undergrad here.
So I just graduated from Penn about a week ago, and it's crazy to think about what was going through my head when I decided to first enroll. But I just want to say first and foremost that it was the best decision I've made, and I look back so fondly on how these 4 years went. But one of the things that drew me to Penn and kind of carried through my whole 4 years was that focus on interdisciplinary learning. I was never interested in just one thing. And actually, I was going back through my transcript, and over my 4 years, I took classes in something like 15 to 20 different departments. Within my major, I made my own concentration. I had minors that were in all different schools from Wharton to the college. And I really just had such a rounded educational experience that I don't know if I could have found at any other school besides Penn. So I think it was definitely the right decision. And that focus on interdisciplinary learning was really crucial to my experience too.
Great. Thank you so much for coming. Please feel free to shoot us an email with any questions.